I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, March the 21st. And what this market is suffering from right now is a lack of confidence. Any other time, whenever you got packers coming out on a Tuesday bidding steady money, then your feedlots and your sellers would say, boy, we've got them right where we want them right now. But no, not anymore. They come out bidding steady or close to steady money nowadays. And they just take it right away, and then we're stuck. We've been in this for about 4 or 5 weeks now, and it's all because everybody is so scared of this wall of cattle that's coming down the pike here, probably sometime in the mid to latter part of April. Yes, we have those cattle coming, but that does not mean that we don't need to make hay right now. We can always say that sometime down the road the market's going to get tough or supplies are going to increase, but if we sit and dwell on that and the glass is half empty deal, we would never get anywhere. But the thing is, and this is going to sound contradictory, but I think we're going down so fast and we're losing so much ground on the board that the board is likely to be oversold before we get to this wall of cattle. And we may run into a little rally sometime between now and when we get to those big numbers and right on the edge of those big numbers, because as far as the board is concerned, it's just what the charts look like. I was talking to a guy here just the other day that is a risk manager, trades in the commodities, knows a lot about all that stuff, sitting on a pile of fundamentals, and he tells me, he says, I try not to watch the fundamentals. He said it's hard not to, but I try to just keep my head out of the fundamentals. And then you think, well, how much sense does that make? But if you look at where all the money is on the board, it's all these speculators, these money managers, the funds, guys like that. They don't know which end of a cow gets up first. They're not sure if a rain helps the market or hurts the market. They're not sure when these cattle are coming or how much cattle would make a difference or really anything. I guarantee you, if you ask most of those guys that are trading commodities and managing a lot of these funds and stuff, they couldn't tell you the difference between a steer and a heifer. So they're just looking at these charts. Well, if they're looking at the charts and they're looking at the same patterns that you're looking at and everybody else is looking at, and then they start reacting in that way, you better get in bed with them and go with them. It's like a guy telling me betting on football one time. He says it's all crooked, and yeah, it's probably crooked, but as long as you're on the right side, you're fine. But you know, you got to get in, and if those guys are studying these charts and they see a head and shoulders or a gap filled or something like that, and they start reacting to it, you better get on and ride along with them. And likely this futures market is falling so fast that we're likely to start seeing some patterns that show this market being oversold before we get to that wall of cattle, and then they'll think it's time to ride it back up, and we may see a little bit of rally. The problem is your cattle sellers, your fundamental guys that have the real product, are not going to have enough confidence to ask more for cattle because they're just so certain that this thing's going in the toilet that they won't try to trade. They need to read Trump's Art of the Deal book or something and get some confidence back in there, try to get some leverage, ask more for cattle instead of taking a steady or lower bid before you even start haggling on anything. But look at the board on Tuesday. June live cattle down $1.15 to end today at 109. 109 for June. The way things are looking right now, it may be hard to keep fat cattle in the triple digits when we get there, but that's not considering that we may be oversold and see another correction before we get there. But April live cattle down 65 cents at 119.57. The market just a day ago was 128. Of course, they've already given that up, but still a long ways from 119.57, and we're late in March now. But April feeder cattle down 75 cents at 137.45. March feeder cattle down 67 at 137.77. Your fat cattle did have some trade on Tuesday. Like I said, your packers come in bidding 126. That's where we started the trade out a week ago. The market is $1.28. Your packers need cattle or they wouldn't be coming that close to the market on a Tuesday. And here we've got the sheep, the guys that are selling their fat cattle. They go, okay, I'll take the 126. And then your guys up north are shaking their head again. Thanks a lot. So Southern Plains have already established their market at 126. We did have a little bit of trade on Monday late. It was also at 126. That started really the ball rolling for Tuesday's trade at 126. And the Northern Plains, it looks like, is going to give up ground this week, selling some cattle at 203 and 204. But also, and some sales that come in through mandatory reporting on Tuesday, although it wasn't widely spread. Iowa had sold some cattle live, spread all the way from 125 to 130 on Tuesday early, and 203 to 204. Nebraska has already sold some 126 at 203, and Colorado has already sold some 126, although we haven't seen it reported voluntarily and enough to really set the market. But there's been enough cattle sell at 126. The guys are really going to have to arm wrestle to get any more than that for cattle. But that's already, you know, $1 to $2 lower. Box beef cutout values are starting to slip back a little bit now, and that is going to turn up the pressure from the packers because they've been riding this rally they've seen in the cutouts here longer than they expected. But choice cutouts late Tuesday, 223.35, down $1.52. That's off of the bulk of last week's trade. Select cutouts 216.74, down 55 cents on the day. Look at your feeder cattle markets, and they are really, really tough to begin this week, guys. Real-time index on Beef Market Central, 141.71, down 26 cents late on Tuesday. You look at some markets, OKC West, everybody's scared to death to sell anything right now this week, and our receipts are going to be light, which maybe that might help things a little bit, but nobody's got any orders. All your feedlots are full. Everybody's got all the grass cattle that they need, and just a real lack of demand out there. But in El Reno, only 1,500 head of calves. That is a super light run for them. That's almost like, you know, middle of July type numbers. But $6 to $8 lower still, and spots 10 lower, just like in the city on Monday. But just not anybody interested in buying any more calves. Most of your guys are kind of having your calves in a holding pattern right now anyway, in a growing yard, trying not to get them too fleshy and keep them green and ready to go out on the pasture. And the pastures are not ready to turn out on. So we've just we've got a lack of demand. Ozarks Regional Stockyards, West Plains, Missouri, 2,800 head there. A little bit better. You still got some guys they're buying some cattle to turn out in the Flint Hills, and they buy a lot of those cattle in that part of the country there in West Plains. They're hard cattle. Calves steady to $5 lower still, and a lighter test of yearlings $2 to $4 lower. I tell you what, that moisture up in the northern plains and up in the top of the mountain states there has really driven some demand for some cattle to turn out in that part of the country. Look at some high country up northern type quotes here on individual quotes. Riverton, Wyoming had a pretty good sale for this time of year, about 1,800 head. And you look at an individual quote there, 162 head of steers, weighed 609 at 188.75. That's pretty salty. And then you think it has to be a bigger market like that. Go farther up north, further away from your feedlots, further away from all the competition you're seeing in the Flint Hills and the Osage, but for grazing cattle. Montana Livestock Auction in Ramsey, Montana, 101 head of 608-pound steers, bring 171. That's pretty good too. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.